No, it's good. Let's make sure to
Yes. Live, really.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد نورك الساري ومددك الجاري واجمعني به في كل أطواري وعلى آله وصحبه يا نور. بسم الله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين. قال المؤلف رضي الله عنه وعنكم ونفعنا به وبكم الى ان قال: الخامس الا يستكثر من الطعام الحلال وقت الافطار بحيث يمتلئ جوفه، فما من وعاء ابغض الى الله جل جلاله من بطن مليء من حلال. فكيف يستفاد من الصوم عدو الله وكثر شهوته إذا تدارك الصائم عند فطره ما فاته ضحبة نهاره، وربما يزيد عليه في ألوان الطعام حتى استمرت العادات بأن تدخر جميع الأطعمة لرمضان، فيؤكل من الأطعمة فيه ما لا يؤكل في عدة أشهر. ومعلوم أن مقصود صوم الخواء وكثر الهوى لتقوى النفس على التقوى. وإذا دفعت المعدة من صحوة نهار إلى العشاء حتى هاجت شهوتها وقويت رغبتها، ثم أطعمت من اللذات وأشبعت، زادت لذتها وتضاعفت قوتها وأنبعث من الشهوات ما عتاها، كانت راكدة لو تركت على عادتها. فروح الصوم وسره تضعيف القوى التي هي وسائل الشيطان في العودة والشكور، لن يحصل ذلك إلا بالتقليل، وهو أن يأكل أكلته التي كان يأكلها كل ليلة ولو لم يصم. أما إذا جمع ما كان يأكله ضحوة إلى ما كان يأكل ليلا فلم ينتفع بصومه، بل من الآداب ألا يكثر النوم بالنهار حتى يحس بالجوع والعطش ويستشعر ضعف القوى، فيصفو عند ذلك قلبه ويستديم في كل ليلة قدرا من الضعف حتى يخف عليه تهجده وأوراده، فعسى الشيطان ألا يحوم على قلبه فينظر إلى ملكوت السماء. وليلة القدر عبارة عن الليلة التي ينكشف فيها شيء من الملكوت، وهو المراد قوله تعالى: إن أنزلناه في ليلة القدر. ومن جعل بين قلبه وبين صدره مخلاة من الطعام فهو عنه محجوب، ومن أخلى معدته فلا يكفيه ذلك برفع الحجاب، من لم يخلي همته عن غير الله جل جلاله. لذلك هو الأمر كله، ومبدأ جميع ذلك تقليل الطعام، وسيأتي له مزيد بيان في كتاب الأطعمة إن شاء الله تعالى.
And so continuing from our previous classes, we were discussing the spirit of Psalm, and we discussed in the previous classes, first we talked about there are three levels of fasting. The fasting of the ordinary people, which are the fasting from basic from food and from water or any drinks. So that's of the fasting of the ordinary. And then there's a fasting of the weak, and that's what we're discussing here. And then there's the fast of the elect of the elect. And so we discussed, there's 6 points he mentioned describing the fast of the elect, and it was regarding guarding one's limbs. They're saying first, guarding one's eyes, and then the second point was guarding one's tongue, and then the third was guarding one's hearing, and the fourth was what we talked about yesterday, was guarding one's limbs and their hands, their feet, and what they eat, staying away not just from the haram, but staying away from the shubuhat, that which is doubtful. And we discussed the concept of wara and how it's important not only during not only in all the times of the year, but specifically in the time of Ramadan. And now we arrive to the fifth point. And Imam Ghazali says, "Allah yastakthira min al-ta'am al-halal waqt al-iftar, بحيث يمتلئ جوفه." And so he's mentioning not to increase or overindulge in food. And notice that he says food that is halal. So from so obviously that talk encompasses food that is haram. We must stay away from that. But this is discussing even food that is halal and not to overindulge in that which is halal. Rather, we take a moderate approach and eat that which when we have enough space to breathe, at least. And so, why is that the case? Well, the goal is all these salah and salam is to have a stronger connection with Allah, so to develop a relationship with Him Azza wa Jal that goes beyond just the ordinary, but rather we ascend and we get to know Him more. And one of the obstacles in that is our nafs, the base desires. And there's two factors. There's one, the factor of the shayateen. So alhamdulillah, in Ramadan, that is reduced. For the shayateen are locked up, that effect is reduced. But then that leaves us with the nafs, the second factor, which incites to uh, it can incite to evil, and so it will call to someone's to eat, to drink, to play, to any different desires. So what the goal in the psalm for us is to reduce them. And so we have the nature of the nafs, it wants, it wants, it wants. The shayateen, it's a whisper. And so they say something, and you can say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, it goes away. Or you remember Allah, you say, La ilaha illallah. People say, if there's a thought that comes, you say, gather yourself and you focus on the lafz of that, and you say, Allah, and it'll go. But with then, what it'll do, it'll say, I want this. And it's an annoying voice that will keep repeating itself. It keeps saying, I want this, I want this, I want that. And so what we need to do is restrict that. And there's an aspect when they talk about the people of Allah, they discuss the purifying one's heart. And one of the biggest components to doing that, to tame one's nafs, is mujahadatun nafs or mukhalafatun nafs, going against what the nafs wants. And that's why you great awliya and their mujahada. There's those even to this day. I had a teacher in Turkey who something so simple as he enjoyed uh, this lemonade that has like mint in it. So you can find it at the stores. And one of the khadim was like, "I go get that for you and your family." He's like, "No, I'm stopping." It's like and he was confused. He's like, "What I do, I enjoy something, and then I notice in my heart, I'm so inclined to that. So what I do is when I get to that point for anything, I just stop and I fast from it for about a couple months." And you notice he's mashallah at a high level, but yet despite that, he's so weary about his desires. Because what it does, wants and wants, and maybe it starts off with halal, but then it goes into the haram. And so he had to stop that. Even there's a story, same teacher, my friend we were gathering and they were serving tea. And he, and they pour the tea out, and my friend was serving sugar, and so he goes to the sheikh first. And says, "Do you like sugar?" He looks at him. He says, "Put it in my hand." And so he puts it in his hand. Just as he was told, he was kind of confused. You can put it in the tea. He said, "Put it in my hand." And he took it and just closed it. And he didn't think of anything. So he goes, he continues, gives it to everyone else, puts in their tea, stir it, and he goes all the way around. And the whole time he's looking at the teacher, and it's still in his hand. And so then by the end, he says, "Afwan, see, why why do you have it in your hand?" And he's like, "The same reason." He's like, I enjoy eating sugar, and I have it every day, so I stop it. I want to hold it in, that there's a desire in my hand. The nafs wants this in my hand. And he's controlling the nafs. He's trying to go against what the nafs wants. And that's the spirit of Saum. That's the spirit of the idea of fasting in the month of Ramadan. We don't give what it wants. Rather, we go against it. And even there's many stories. Even Sheikh Nuh, many of you know, during Ramadan, during the time of COVID, he would the masjid was closed. Yet, despite that, every day for 5 periods, you get outside the masjid, you get outside of his house, walk all the way to the masjid's door, and then he return back home. That he doesn't get used to not going to the masjid. And so these are all stories that should incite and make us this desire to also follow in their footsteps. However, there's a balance that needs to be made. Our teachers they prescribe for us that when we're sitting at the table for food, what we do, we eat and we can enjoy, whether it be once or twice or 3 times a day. That's fine. But our teachers would say, eat until the point where when you know you're about to get full, stop 2 or 3, or 1 or 2 or 3 bites before that. And there's a hikmah in that. It's teaching us to stop what we want, so that we stop before and we're holding our nafs a little bit, but also not too much, which can cause a relapse where you hold the nafs, you reprimand the nafs, and you reprimand it until it lashes back at you with more force. And so that's not what we want. And that's what Imam Busiri in his Burda, he says, wary of the nafs and what it calls to. But also be wary. Then he also mentioned being wary of being hungry as well, because that could be even worse. And so there's a balance, and that's the way our teachers mention. And then Imam Ghazali, he mentions, فَمَا مِنْ وَعَاءٍ, there's not a vessel that's more, that there's not a vessel that is more hated to Allah than that, than the stomach being filled with halal. And that's halal, haram, of course. But even with halal, that's not beloved to Allah. Those who are traveling and trying to seek Allah's love, not just the basic relationship, but that to become one of Allah's beloved servants, right? This should scare oneself and should cause oneself to be wary, be very cautious, for we do things with purpose, with people with purpose. And so when we sit, we have to realize the purpose that this food is, alhamdulillah, is a ni'mah from Allah. And we thank Allah, we state of shukr. We also, we also eat that which helps us gain energy to worship Allah and to help fulfill the duties of family and whatnot. And then continues, and he mentions that even in the month of Ramadan, there are those who increase in their types of food that they eat, and to the point where they go over that which they normally would have eaten. And so they would make up for what they missed in the daytime, and they would eat more and more at night. That obviously goes against the purpose of fasting. For you mentioned the purpose of fasting is to feel hunger, is to break our desires, that we can have God consciousness. For when we fall and we overindulge in our desires, there's a heaviness that comes in that, and there's a lack of taqwa that comes with that as well. Then he mentioned روح الصوم وسره تضعيف القوى. The ruh of the spirit of fasting is to weaken the nafs, or that what it wants, so that shaitan, because it is a means that shaitan uses to incite evil. And when one reduces that, one reduces the means that shaitan can use. And so what shaitan does, it's just a whisper, but he'll see what addictions that we may have, and he may whisper to that, whisper and say, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? And we have this nest that's already inclined to that, it starts riling up, and we start wanting, then it's saying, I want this, and then it becomes. And so in Ramadan, we got to learn to say no a little bit. We have to restrain ourselves. And when we come to iftar, we continue. Yes, our teachers, one of my teachers would say, we don't break our fast, we open our fast. And his meaning by that was, we don't break the spirit of the fast. Yes, Maghrib time comes in, we eat, and Allah commanded us for us to eat at that point. But we continue with the spirit of fasting, which is to connect to Allah, which is to lower, still refrain from indulging in what we want and engaging in what Allah wants from us. And when that happens, when one also, one may feel that in Ramadan there's a stronger connection they have when they're praying and they reciting Quran, and that's due to the hunger they. And so when the nafs, when the body gets less, of course, more of the akhirah in them. They have this connection to Allah, and the tahajjud and different awrad become easy. The less you eat, the less you sleep. These things make it easier for one to enjoy dhikr of Allah. It allows one to connect to Allah Azza wa Jal. And stories, one thing that helps is to listen to the story of those worshippers of Allah. Their salah was the coolness of their eyes. Enjoy, they long for salah. They would say, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." Bring relief to us, ya Bilal, by calling, our souls can be at peace. Sahaba, there was a story in Sahaba when he needed to end his leg. He told the companion to do that while he's in prayer. And they did it, and he didn't when he was in sajda, I believe sajda or ruku'. And then once he finished, he said, I thought you were going to amputate it. And they said, yes, we did. It shows he didn't even feel it because of his relationship with Allah, his enjoyment and complete submersion in his dhikr with Allah Azza wa Jal. He didn't feel anything else. And so this is a time period for us to get closer. And if we're people of God consciousness, we do things, we have to think about the purpose of every action. right? For every type of day, we should. That's what our teachers, Imam Haddad, he mentioned in his book, Risala Jamia, not Risala Jamia, Risala Muawiyah, book of assistance. In this chapter, he discusses intention, right? And so to have a good intention, but not just a mere by the tongue, but rather with purpose, with heart, a single aspect, and doing it to do every single aspect and connecting it to the love of Allah. And so we even are eating, even our standing, even you notice people who enter Islam, they new Muslims, they have this energy that others, though you're born Muslim, they may have a stronger energy. Why? Because their convictions are stronger, their motivations are stronger. They had a habit of their own regular life before Islam, and then they realized Islam was the religion. They made that choice. Allah is Allah is one, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger. And then the book is the Quran is haqq, is true. And so when it calls upon us to stand up and pray 5 times a day, they do that with that meaning in their hearts that Allah Azza wa Jal is telling me to stand up. And so they have this conviction. Alhamdulillah, they may not have had the habit before, but they have this conviction that this is the truth. And so they get up with that purpose. And so there's a difference in that. And so for us, maybe who have been born Muslim, we, alhamdulillah, may have the good habit of praying 5 times a day and engaging in extra nawafil and the sunnah. What we have to do is, and we have to focus on re-engaging, uh, feeling the why we are doing, having that purpose, and feeling Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling me to stand up. That's why I stand. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it. That's why I want to do it. I want to follow in his footsteps. I want to be like him. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار. I want to be with, and I want to be of those who are the beacon of light in this time and day, in this time and age. Even though we may be far away from his time, we can still follow in his footsteps and be of those khulafa, that of this generation. And so it says, فَلَا يَكْفِيهِ ذَلِكَ لِرَفْعِ الْحِجَابِ. He's speaking about it's not sufficient that one is it's not sufficient that one refrains from eating, but rather he also has فَلَا يَكْفِيهِ ذَلِكَ لِرَفْعِ الْحِجَابِ. It's not sufficient for one to stop eating that the veils be uncovered for him, but rather it also has to be mixed with that his himma, his drives is all focused on Allah. And so it helps in the beginning of that is reducing food. But one could also say is your drive and your whole himma, your purpose is for Allah Azza wa Jal, then you approach this table food and you eat, and then you're aware that this is for Allah Azza wa Jal. You're eating for Allah Azza wa Jal, and you won't, and you then your goal is Allah Azza wa Jal. So you know that if you eat too much, you'll stop you from that goal. And so you can also, yes, you could just do the outer action of reducing, but mix it with purpose. And that's what there's some other portions that I skip because it's not, I'm not gonna, these are those portions perhaps someone more qualified can discuss, but may Allah allow us to grant us the spirit of fasting, the true spirit of fasting, and give us allow us to be people of purpose in all of our actions, and that Allah accepts our action. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, it's going to be announced, or it is already announced on the WhatsApp chat. But Fajr tomorrow will be at 6:25 a.m. It'll be 10 minutes earlier than the usual Iqamah time. So inshallah, it'll be at 6:25 a.m. And the end of night adhkar should begin around at 5:17 or 5:18 a.m. Inshallah.